First, let me introduce myself to you. I'm Rajesh. I have nearly 10 years of experience in this UI development and designing, and I have 4 plus years of experience in this Angular.js. My day-to-day work is designing an application and creating modules using this very famous framework Angular.js. So what I will be doing is just I will be creating the custom directives using the Angular.js. So whoever want those guys can go ahead, they can use our directives. This is my day-to-day work. Okay. Let's start our Angular.js session. So, okay, what is our session first of all? Today this session is about developing a responsive single page application using this Angular.js. What are all the objectives of this session? First one is we have to learn what is Angular.js and why do we need to use this Angular.js in our application. And if I learn this Angular.js, what are all the opportunities I will be getting? Then the next one is why should I learn this Angular.js? Because there are more MVC frameworks are available. Then what is the advantage in it? So you have to know why are we learning this Angular.js and what are all the features we have in this Angular.js. And why do we need this MVC architecture in Angular.js? The later we will be building a basic Angular.js application. These are all the objectives. Whenever we complete this course, you will be having a knowledge on why are we using Angular.js, and what are all the features of these things. Next one. So who are all using this Angular.js? So almost everyone knows this Angular.js is a Google's product. So obviously YouTube is also the Google's product, so they should be use this Angular.js. The main thing is that YouTube is using this Angular.js latest version in their PlayStations, and the Paytm, everyone knows about it. Netflix is movies and this US shows, everything you can watch it in the Netflix. These guys are using this Angular.js framework in the client side. Okay, where do they use this Angular.js in their project? So if you are building a web application, for the web application, you have to use some kind of JavaScript framework to write your custom validations and other stuff. Over there in the client side, they are using this Angular.js to make this application to look better and give the rich user functionalities. Okay. So why do we need to learn Angular.js? So before we learn this Angular.js, we have to know, okay, do we have the opportunities? Because if we have more JavaScript frameworks outside like Ember, Backbone. So if we get opportunities through this Angular.js, then only we'll go for it. This Angular.js officially released on 2009. If you see now that most of the projects are using this Angular.js because of this feature. And job trends, it's awesome because each and every client-side application, if you need Angular.js, they are looking for the Angular.js developer. So even we have the more global opportunities, each and every big firms like TCS, Wipro and other stuff, they are looking for the Angular.js UI developer with this Angular.js knowledge. So everyone is working for the money. So we know that. So okay, if we learn this Angular.js, do we get the more opportunities by the salary? Of course, yes. If you see, it is really hot in US market and as well as in the India market because all the rich web applications, they are using this Angular.js. Okay. So we have a n number of applications, JavaScript web applications in market. So these are all the popular ones. One is Angular.js, Backbone.js and the Ember.js. Okay. So first you have to compare. Before you choose particular application, we should be able to know why am I going to use this application. Okay. The first one, if you ask me why am I choosing this Angular.js is there are more modules are available, custom modules. I can say nearly 30,000 modules are available in this Angular.js. But if you see it in the Backbone or Ember, we have very less. We can say like 300 or just 350 modules available in this Ember.js. So what is the use of these modules? Whenever we need to build a particular web application, we can't build everything from the scratch. So we need some kind of custom components. For example, I want to build a drag and drop some container. I don't want to write the code from the scratch itself. So what we will be doing, we will be just whatever the module available in the market, we will take it and we will include it in the application. In this way, if we have more modules in this Angular.js, so it will be helpful for the developers to build this application in quick time. And the next one is, there are more contributors for this Angular.js. You can say nearly 30,000 contributors are there in Angular.js. So if you are getting any doubts, you can ask in any forum. We will be getting quick reply for this your queries. That is really helpful. Most of the developers will be posting the queries in Angular Stack Exchange or Stack Manager over there, these kind of Stack Overflow sites. So we'll be getting the answers in very short time whenever you're using Angular.js, because there are more contributors. So mostly they will be facing these kind of troubles, so they may face, so they can answer it very quickly. And in this Angular.js, this Angular.js doesn't need any other dependencies. If you see Backbone.js or Ember.js, it needs jQuery, _js and the handlebar.js. But in Angular.js, there is no dependency. It will work alone in your application. Whenever you want to build a client-side application, just you can have only this Angular.js plugin itself. That's more than enough. And routing. So what does it mean by routing? Routing means navigating from one page to next page. So for example, each and every website will be having tabs. Let's say I have a home tab, about tab and the contacts tab. So if I want to navigate between the tabs, what I will be doing, okay, so we will be having a route parameters. With the route parameters, we have to load the different views. That is really simple in Angular.js compared to Backbone and the Ember. The next one is testing. Whenever developer builds an application, they should be able to write their unit test cases, as well as we should give some option to test this application, like automation, everything. In this Angular.js, we have an awesome test support. If we have this protector with the Selenium, we can write end-to-end automated testing in this Angular.js. Yeah, I got a question from Jeff. What about the performance metrics? Okay. So this Angular.js is a very lightweight component. It's not like Ember or Backbone. Maximum I can say it is just a 36 KB of size whenever you are using a min version. So it definitely won't affect your performance. It will load it will load in the application very quick time. And each and every directives we are using in the Angular.js, that is really lightweight. So for example, we can write a click event in Angular.js as well as in the Backbone or Ember.js. So whenever I call this event, it won't take not more than 0.01 microseconds. But Ember and this Backbone will take more time. So performance, you need not to worry about this Angular.js. It is really awesome. Yeah. Again, I got one more question from Ravi called the data binding. Yes. Okay. So what is this data binding? Whenever we get a particular data object from the server, we have to bind it in the UI. Angular.js giving the two-way binding support, so you need not to worry about this. So normally if you use jQuery or any other frameworks, you have to read the data and bind it in the HTML like $, that particular class or ID, that value of something. But here you need not to do. Whenever you update your model, it automatically updates the view. So this data binding is really simple in this Angular.js. Did I answer your question, Ravi? Okay. Yeah. And we have one more question from Vengat. If I want to use Bootstrap along with Angular.js, can I go with it? Yes, of course. you can go with that. So in the AngularJS itself, they have created one module for Bootstrap. Normally we know if we want to use Bootstrap, we need the jQuery support. But this AngularJS doesn't have any other jQuery support over here. Okay. So if you want to use the Bootstrap, you can include a module called Bootstrap UI. You just include the module as a dependency inside your application. You can access all the Bootstrap functionalities like your pop-up, pop-over, accordion, everything. CSS, that doesn't matter with this AngularJS JavaScript framework, so it will accommodate with that. Okay, and we have one more question. Like just the Vasan want me to explain this dependency once again. Okay, so over here, what does it mean by dependency? We have two things. You should not confuse dependency injection with dependencies. Dependency means if I want to load this AngularJS, I need some other JavaScript library dependencies. Okay, it will work along with that one only. For example, if I want to use the Bootstrap, I have to use the jQuery library. Then only it will work proper. In the same way, Backbone, I need the jQuery. Ember, I need the handlebar. But AngularJS, we don't need any other dependencies. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Then this mobile app. Ravi is asking one more question. Will it support in the mobile app? Yes, of course. It will support in the mobile app also. So what AngularJS will support in all the devices like mobile, tablet and the laptops. So it will get support everywhere. Okay. Yes. One more good question from Vignesh. Will it support in IE browser? Each and every UI developer knows about it. IE, if you want to build some particular latest web application with IE, that is really difficult. But this AngularJS supports in IE 9 plus. So it is supported, not in this IE 7 or IE 8. Okay. So I got a question from Shahil called, suppose I use Twitter Bootstrap and its dependencies on jQuery, hope it's not conflict the jQuery file. Okay, this is what I'm telling. Whenever you want to use the Twitter Bootstrap application with AngularJS, instead of including our Bootstrap file, you can include it as a dependency injection. They have created a Bootstrap module, so you can include that with our application. But if you want to include the just normal Twitter Bootstrap file with jQuery, that doesn't matter. It won't have any other conflict. We can use it together. Okay, I am getting one more question from Jeff. I read AngularJS V2 is going to be completely different from 1.3. Does it make sense to learn? Yes. See, this V2 is somewhat different, but it is not totally different from this 1.3 or 1.4. That's why we are doing all the AngularJS, whatever. If I want to migrate my application from 1.3 to V2, we have to follow some kind of structures. Like instead of using $scope, we can use this object. And instead of using the direct controllers, you can use the alias. Like now normally in the AngularJS we will mention ng controller equal to some my controller name alone. But we want to migrate it to the AngularJS 2. So we have to do it in some proper way. That is, instead of just mentioning your controller name, you can mention it as my ng controller equal to my controller some alias name. So this will be really easy whenever we migrate to AngularJS 2 from 1.3 or 1.4. Okay. Yes, I got one more question from Vamsi asking, is AngularJS 2.0 using EMCS script? Yes, everyone knows about this. Now this AngularJS 2.0 is using this EMCA. EMCA is the advanced version of the script now you are using. It is like kind of Java. So you can write your classes over there in the JavaScript. Now this AngularJS 2.0 is built on EMCA script. Okay, let's start the session. Okay, now what is AngularJS? AngularJS is a JavaScript framework created by Google. Before this, Misko and Adam created this AngularJS library, then it has been taken by the Google. So they are supporting this AngularJS framework now. Okay, so whenever we use this AngularJS framework, as from the web developers or the designers, it will give more control to the application. Normally, in the old application, whenever we use JSP or ASP.NET, almost all the business logics we will be implementing in the server side alone. In client side, just we will get the user data, maximum of the validation. That's it we will do. But now whenever we use this kind of JavaScript frameworks in the server side, it is giving more control on the client side itself. And the one more thing is, this AngularJS is not much different from the HTML element tags. So it is really similar to this HTML and JavaScript. So it is really simple to learn. So if you see this Misko saying, whenever you want to develop an application with this AngularJS, you need not to think this as a framework. So you can think it as our own DSL. DSL means domain specific language. In this, using this AngularJS, we can create our own elements like HTML elements. We have something like a p tag, input tag, or body. These are all the elements. In the same way, we can create the elements using this AngularJS directive. So these directives will be useful. So for this particular element, you can give, this is the functionality for this element. For example, if you see this p tag, the p tag will be having some margin and the padding, everything default. In the same, and if you see this input tag, it will be having some kind of functionalities. In the same way, I can create my own tag, new Angular. So I can create it as a new Angular tag, and this particular tag I can use some functionalities. Like whenever mouse over on this tab, show some popovers. Like I can create my own functionalities on this elements. Okay. What are all the challenges of web development we have now? So now there are more users in mobile phone, tablet and laptops. So whenever you build a particular web application, so that should support in each and every devices. Then next one is user preference. If you see, some user wants to see the data in normal tabular format, but some other people want to see the data in nice graphical manner. Like you might have seen in everything D3 and other graphs. So it is depends on the each and every users. But we have to achieve everything whenever we build this application and the skill set. If you see, whenever you are working on this particular application, so we need resource to develop those applications. So we need the skill set also for that. The next big stuff is agility. That is, whenever we build a particular application, we will be keep on new changes from our product owners or the client. So we should be able to take those changes and implement it in our application very small time. These are all the challenges what we are facing whenever we do this web development. Okay, let's see whether can we come up with these changes in the AngularJS. Okay, whether is it supported in the multi devices? Yes, AngularJS is supported in all the devices, mobile, laptop as well as tablet, and it will run in all the operating systems because it is running on this client side, that is on the browser. Then this user preference. We can show the data because this AngularJS is a two-way binding and we have the separate model and view. So we can show the data in different kind of views. A single data can be shown in the different views. So it is really simple. and skill set. As we discussed already, we have more skilled person on this AngularJS compared to other frameworks, so it is really helpful for the development. Okay, agility, this is the main thing. Whenever we build some particular component, we will be getting a new change over there from our product owner. Is it really implement from the Angular? Can we implement from this AngularJS? Yeah, because each and every page will act as a separate controllers. So whenever we get a new changes, we can implement it another controller over there. So we can adapt to the new changes whenever we build this web application using AngularJS. Why should I learn AngularJS? One is more control. Already we discussed this one. If the old application and all, we'll be writing all the business logic in the server side. But now you can write the business logic, not only the validation, all kind of logics inside this controller itself. So it is giving more control on the application from the client side itself. So it will improve the performance, because for simple business logic, if I want to hit the server and do that logic, getting back the data, instead of that, I can do that logic inside my web browser itself. So it will improve the performance. Next one, simplicity. This AngularJS, it is really simple and clean. So what does it mean is, this each and every AngularJS directives and the functions, everything is similar to our HTML tag and this normal JavaScript function. So it is easy to learn AngularJS. Next one, testing. So whenever we build an application, we should be able to do unit test cases, as well as we have to write the testing also for this application. If we use this AngularJS, we can write the testing using Mocha or this protector tool. We can write end-to-end automated test cases. Flexible and extensible. Now, we are building a particular web application with some other language. Let's say we are building with jQuery. Is it flexible? Will it adapt our AngularJS in the application? Yes, it is. So whenever I build application, the separate module alone I can build with the AngularJS. In the same way, if I already build the application with AngularJS, can I extend that application? Yes. Because in your AngularJS, each and every components, you will be creating it as a controllers. So what you will be doing? For example, now I have one user application. The user can log into this application, then they can add the user, they can delete the user. I want to give new functionality over there. Just I want update the user also. So this add user and delete user will be the separate module, and I can add one more module simply to update the user. It will be the third controller to it. It is really easy to extend this application. Popularity. Already we have seen these graphs. So it is rich. Now there are more companies are using this AngularJS and more products are using this, and we are getting more developers for this AngularJS also. Okay. What are all the features of AngularJS? If you ask me, the best feature in AngularJS is two-way binding. Okay. What is this two-way binding? Whenever you change an object in your model, automatically your view will get updated. In the same way, if you change the view, the model will get updated. It's called two-way binding. So you need not to write any code for updating view and model separately. So this will be taken care of this $watch service. The next one is filters. What is it, filters? Okay, I want to get the date and I want to format it to the user. For example, we will be storing the date as a data object in our DB. But if I show the same data object to the user again in the view page, that doesn't make any sense. But so I have to format the date and I want to show it as a human readable, like DDMMYY or MMDDYY in the summer format. So in this AngularJS, we have the own filters like date filter, toUpper, toLower and JSON, these things. So with this filter, we can format the data as ever we want in simple way. Next one is the best one is the dependency injection. Okay. So for now I want to build a basic AngularJS application. At that time I don't want to do this UI routing, or I don't want to do this bootstrap and other stuff. Okay. At the time I can create my application with simple AngularJS file itself. It is just 35 or 40 KB of size. Okay. In the same way, whenever I want to build the biggest application, at the time whatever the components I want, I can inject it as a dependency injection. So whenever you want to build a simple application, it will be simple, and the complex application, whatever you need, only those components we are injecting. It is not like some other frameworks, all the functionalities will be available. So whatever you want, just use it. It is not like that. So whenever you have all the functionalities inside your application, so it will increase your size of this particular application. It will affect the performance. That's why this dependency injection came to the picture. Next one is scope. Scope is it is like an instance of your class. So with the scope, you can access all the variables and functions inside your controller. In the same way, if you give some data to the scope, automatically it will update your view. This is what, because $watch service will be always listening for the scope variables. Whenever the scope variable changes, the $watch service trigger an event to the view. Okay, this particular scope variable changes, update the view. So view automatically gets updated. In the same way, if any change happens in the view, it will update the scope variable. So we need not to write any code for this. The next one is directives. Okay, what is this directives? If you see this AngularJS, you can see something called ng app or ng controller, ng click. These are all the directives built in this AngularJS itself. In the same way, we can build our own custom directives. For example, we have this ng click directive. What is it doing? Whenever I click, it is calling some particular functionality. In the same way, I want to build some directive like, okay, whenever I click on this, open the pop-up. I can create that kind of directive. This is the use of directives. Any questions? Okay, I'm getting some more questions. Can we integrate? I'm getting a question from Pramod is, how is this different from Node.js? Okay, Node.js is a server-side application. So this AngularJS is a client-side application. So this is the major difference between this Node.js and the AngularJS. Okay, and I'm getting one more question from Hemant is, time is running, please go on the functionality and practical to use. Let's go there. What is two-way binding? Let's answer for this Ravi's question. Two-way binding is whenever you update the view, automatically we have to update this model. So we did not write any event for it. Anyway, we will see this two-way binding and this directives in our practical sessions. Okay. JavaScript MVC framework. So we are talking about this for a long time. AngularJS is supporting MVC framework. What is MVC framework? MVC stands for Model View Controller. Model is just the data, whatever you have it. For example, I can get the user information from the backend. I will be holding the data in the model. And view, it is just a presentation layer, that is the HTML. Next one is the controller. Over there, you can write all your business logics, validations, and other stuff. This is the model view controller of the JavaScript framework. Okay, what is the advantage of MVC framework? So whenever we separate this model view controller, it will give more maintainability, extensibility, and testability. Okay, so now I'm building one application. So if I put everything together, later if I hand over this application to some other developers, it will be really difficult to maintain that application. Now each and everything, our model view controller is separated. That's why it will be gives more maintainability. Whoever comes for this application newly, they can understand it. It don't need more KT to explain everything for them. That is the main advantage of our MVC framework. This is our AngularJS architecture. If you see this left side, it is our normal DOM, whatever we have, whatever we are seeing in this browser. Whenever we include our AngularJS application, so what it will do, it will take your static DOM and it will compile it as an AngularJS object. In this AngularJS, we have two things. One is $compile and another one is $root scope. Normal scope is, it is applicable only inside one controller. But whenever you are defining an object with the root scope, it will be applicable all over the application. We will see this difference between scope, root scope, everything in the demo session in just 5 minutes. So just we'll see this. So what we are doing, whenever we render our application in the browser, the static DOM element will be getting in the ng app. Whenever we start our application, we'll mention ng app. That will be considered as a root of this application. Once this root loaded, it will take your static DOM. It will put all the scope variables you mentioned in the static DOM and compile it. So this compiler, it will take your scope objects and root scope objects. It will add it in your DOM and it will make it to dynamic. That's why you can do all the ng click, ng mouse over, everything. So it is converting your static DOM into this dynamic. Okay. How to write a basic program in AngularJS? Whenever you want to start this AngularJS program, first you have to download and include your AngularJS plugin. So that's what we are doing. First we have included our AngularJS plugin in the script. Next we have a directive called ng app. What does it do? Whenever you include this AngularJS plugin and if you run it in the browser, this plugin will look for the directive called ng app. Once it finds that directive, that particular element will be the root of your AngularJS application. Now if you see in this example, we have ng app in the body. So whatever you are declaring inside this body, everything will be considered as a AngularJS components. So here you can write ng controller or ng click event, everything. So this part under the body will be considered as the AngularJS components. Okay. So to build the AngularJS application, what do we need? Just one Notepad or any your favorite tool, then just one web browser. That's more than enough to run your web application. Before we go to demo, do you have any other questions? Please post your questions in the question window. Okay. We are getting a question from Surender. Can we add ng app? Yes. So this wherever you add the ng app, from there only AngularJS application starts. So if you want to start the application, you have to add ng app. Okay. The next question, what is ng controller? So if you want to write any other business logics or the validations, all the logics goes inside the controller. This is where you can write the logics. Okay. Let's start the basic AngularJS application. So we can answer all the questions. So what I'm going to do, already I have downloaded my AngularJS file. So I have to create my HTML right here. Let me open that particular HTML, whatever I have created now. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Is this visible for you? Yeah, thank you. So this is the editor, the Sublime editor. So it just really makes developers' life easy. Whenever I want to create a HTML5 skeleton, I will type like HTML:5 and tap. It will create the skeleton for us. This is the best editor I feel. Let's create the title. Okay. Whenever we want to start our application, we have to include this Angular.js script file inside this application. So now we have included the script. Okay. So as I told, whenever we include the script will look for ng app directive. So this, wherever you are writing this ng app directive, that will be considered as the root of your application. If I write my ng app right here inside my body, this will be considered as the root. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to include this ng app in the root of your DOM. Our root of your DOM is this HTML tag. Right here, I'm including this ng app. So I have included the ng app. Here I want to give some name for this Angular.js application. Let's give it as a demo. So here I defined my Angular.js application. Now you have to declare it. Okay, I'm creating a script tag right here itself where app equal to. This is the syntax for declaring your Angular.js application. If you see in this syntax, we are giving some empty brace right here. So this empty brace is for the dependency injection what we discussed. So what if you need any other modules to access in this particular application, what you can do, you can download those modules and inject it as a dependencies. For example, if you want to include this bootstrap, download this bootstrap script and include it as a dependency right here, bootstrap. So you can access all the functions inside the bootstrap inside this particular Angular.js application. This is the use of dependency injection. For now, we don't need these dependencies. Let's start the basic application. Okay. Now we have created an Angular.js application. I'm marking it as a Angular.js application with the name called demo. Let's run this. Okay. This is my developer tool. Now we started this application. Now I want to write some kind of functionalities over here. As I mentioned, if you want to write your business logics or any other validations, we have to write it in our controller. So let's create the controller for Angular.js. I have defined a controller called test controller over here. So now I have to define it in the same way how we have defined this Angular.js. So app dot controller of test controller. So you can extend, we are mentioning for this particular application, I am creating the controller. That's what we are mentioning right here. So now we have created the controller. Let me add the console.log right here. So we'll get to know whether it is coming inside this controller or not. You can see this. Now it is coming inside this test controller. So whenever you are defining the controller and the test controller, it will call this particular controller, it will come, it will execute whatever the functionalities you have written inside this controller. Okay. Now let's see the expressions inside this particular controller. if you want to do any AngularJS expressions, we have to use this double brace. Let me build this 4 plus 4. So this is normal HTML. If I want to evaluate as an expression, you have to give it inside this particular braces. Now if I give 4 plus 4 over here, it will evaluate it and it will give the result. So let me put it in the big size. Here. So this is a normal HTML content and I'm adding right here 4 plus 4 and it will evaluating and it is giving the result. So you can write all the expressions inside this double braces in the AngularJS, so it will evaluate. Internally it is using our normal .eval function. Okay. Now we are seeing this expression right here. Now I want to see what is called two-way binding in this AngularJS. Let's do that. I'm going to create a scope variable inside this controller. I'm creating a scope variable called name. I'm just naming it as Jeff. So this is my scope variable name. If I want to give the scope variable name inside this controller, I will give it in the same way whatever I have done it in the expression. Let me do this. So I'm going to give this particular variable name right here. So this is available right here. It came. So whatever the name I mentioned right here, it is available. You can access that in the view. What I have done, I'm not writing any functionality. So if you are using jQuery, what you will be writing? We will be getting the class or ID of this particular content and inner HTML or .html will push it. But here we need not to do anything. Whenever you update it in the model, automatically that model will update in the view. Let's do it in this way. We have one more directive called ng model in the AngularJS. So what it will do, whatever you are mentioning right here, in the same object you can give it to the model. So this model will take this. If you change anything in the model, it will update this object over there in the controller as well as the object there in this view. So we are using this $scope variable called name. Let's give this name as a model to this text box. You can see this. Let me put it in the bigger text. Okay. Now inside that, whatever changes I am making, it will be updated in the view. I haven't written any functionalities over here. If you want to accomplish this function with a normal JavaScript or jQuery, what we will be doing? We will be listening for this key up event in the text box. Whenever the key up event happens, we will be updating this view. But this is what we are calling as a two-way binding. So whenever you change this particular model value, this view is automatically changing. This is called two-way binding over here. Okay. Can we use multiple controllers inside our application? Yes, we can use multiple controllers right here. Already I have defined one controller called test controller in this application. Let me define one more controller. I'm defining one more controller called test controller new. In the same way, you have to extend this controller. Okay. Now I have extended this controller. can I use this particular controller scope variable inside this controller? No, you can't use it. So because this controller is separate from this controller. If you want to use it, you have to use it by our root scope variable. Let's try this before. Already I defined a scope variable called name inside my first controller. If I keep name right here, inside my second controller, let me run this. See, here we are not at all getting anything because this scope available only inside this controller itself. If you want to share the scope between the controller, you can do with the $scope, root scope, or you can do with the services. So let's, instead of writing it in the $scope, let's make it in the root scope. I'm injecting the root scope to this particular controller. Let me put this Jeff in the root scope. Now this Jeff is available in the first controller as well as in the second controller. So whatever the data you are defining in the root scope, it will be available all over this application. But if you are defining it as a normal $scope, it will be available only inside that particular controller. Okay, do you guys having any other questions? Okay, we have a question from Surender called root. He is asking me to explain this root scope again. Okay, so what does it mean by root scope? Normally this root scope, let me build one more, let me put this scope variable right here. Scope dot name equal to Jeff. So this particular Jeff will be available, accessible only inside this controller alone. So I want to declare a name inside my one controller, but I want to access it all over the application. What you can do? So if you are defining it in the root scope, it is like an instance of your application. So however, we have this global variable in the same way. Whatever you are defining as a root scope dot some particular name, so that will be available in the global all your application. So you can access it anywhere in the controller. Okay. Okay. What is global and local variable? So global and local variable is, so if you want, it's like a normal our functionalities. Whenever you are defining it as a local variable, it will be accessible only inside that particular function alone. So after that particular function, if you want to access it, that local variable inside the out of that function, you can't access it. It will throw this undefined. So you have to define it as globally. If you are defining it as a globally, so it will be accessible all over this application. Next one, can we have a more ng app? I'm getting a question from Nitish. Can I use more ng app? No, you can use only one ng app as per the application, because otherwise you will get confused. Okay, where does application start? As I mentioned, application starts from wherever it finds the ng app. So this will be considered as the root. You can't have two root for a single application. So we can use only one ng app per application. How to create a user-defined function? I'm getting a question from Ilya. Let me do this. Okay. Now we have seen normal two-way binding and other things. Now I want to create a function. Whenever user clicks on some particular button, I want to do some kind of business logic. Let me write this. Inside my, let me delete these controllers, so otherwise it is confusing. Now I have only one controller in my application. Let me create a button. Whenever I click on this particular button, I want to alert the user saying, okay, you click this button. So I have to write a controller functionality right here. Alert me. I'm creating one function called alert me. So I'm going to define this function inside my first controller. So this is the syntax to create the function, user-defined function in the controller. Now we have a button. Whenever I click on this button, it will throw the alert. This is the functionality we have written right here. This is how we can create user-defined functions inside this Angular.js application. Yeah, I'm getting one more question from Nitish. Can I have no app, no controller in the Angular.js application? Yes, of course you can create an application with no app. I mean, you have to mark it as a ng app, but you need not to define it. Let me do that for you. Right here, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to define just the ng app. I'm not going to write this particular ng app equal to whatever it is. Let me comment everything. So I define only the ng app over there, and I'm deleting the functionalities right here. So still we can access all our expressions, everything inside this functionality. Can you see this number 8? Now with just only the ng app, whenever you are mentioning it as ng app, it will be considered as the Angular.js application. You need not to define it. But the best practice is give it as a name, then only you can create the controllers and other stuff with the application. Just with the expression alone, we can't build the application. That's why we are defining it. Yeah, and we are getting a question from Shahil asking how we can create this URL routing. Okay, now we have seen the basic Angular.js session. Now let me show you the application whatever I built using this Angular.js. Okay, this is the basic program we have covered. Let's go for this demo. Now our scenario is I want to build a basic Angular.js application where user can log in, create a new user, view this user list and delete user. This is what the functionality I want to create using Angular.js. What are the things you need before to create this application? One is our editor. Next one is the browser to view this application. Now I am going to build this application on Node.js server. So you should have the Node.js installed in your machine. Then I'm going to use MongoDB to store the user information. I'm going to use, this is the application. Okay. Let me check whether I have Node installed in my machine or not. So if you want to check whether you have a Node installed, just type node-d. It will give the version number whatever you install. If you don't have Node, that doesn't matter. It is really simple to install this Node. Just go to node.org, download the executable file and install it. We can install this Node simply. Then I want to run MongoDB in my application just to store the information. Let me start the MongoDB. So here I have started the MongoDB. Now this MongoDB is listening to the port 27017. Now I got that also. Now MongoDB is up and running. Let me check whether it is showing the database and other stuff. Okay. Now you can see now this MongoDB connected to this disk. If I want to show the database, it will give all the databases. Okay, now MongoDB also is working fine. Now let's start the basic application. Whenever we need to build a web application with Node.js, what we have to do is we have to create our package.json. Let me open this. First, I will be mentioning the name of this application and the version. These things are mandatory. Okay. After that, inside this Node.js, I'm going to use Express framework. So Express is a framework on top of this Node application. Then body parser, it is for passing the normal string to JSON and other stuff. Mongoose, it is the connection between MongoDB and the Node.js. Lodash is just for, it's like _JS to do the data processing. These are all the dependencies I'm going to use inside my Node application. So whenever you want to start your Node app, what you have to do? You have to create just basic package.json, and inside your app.js, you have to mention everything. My Express, I have mentioned Mongoose. So whenever I mention it as like require of Express, it will get this Express module from this Node modules, and we can access the Express inside this particular page. That's what you can do. So here I have done the basic server configurations right here. You can see this. And whenever you are making as app that listen to some particular port, then if you start your Node application, this application will be listened to this mentioned port number. Okay. How to start the Node application? Just navigate to that particular path and let's start to Node whatever the file name you have given. Here I mark it as app.js. So I will be starting Node app. Now this application is listening to 3000 port. Whatever the console I printed right here, so it is showing over here. Listening to 3000 port. Let me open that particular URL right here. Okay. Now it is, whenever I hit this 3000, it is coming to the login.page. So what I am mentioning it in my application, whenever any URL request comes, go to client.index.html. So any URL comes, it will go to the client folder and it will open this index.html. In the same way, if any service came for .js or .html or anything like this, this is the regular expression to find if the service is coming in this way. Whatever .js or HTML, something 2 to 4 characters. So whenever I request for a .js file or .html file, it will send it with the directory name, the full path I need. That's why we are getting the directory name of this particular files. Okay. So what I am doing right here, whenever we load this application, automatically it will load our index.html. That's the thing we configured it in our app.js. So in the index.html, we have to create our Angular app. So what I'm doing, first I'm injecting Angular.js file right here. You can see this. Client/bower component. I have this Angular.js file inside the bower component. So I'm just injecting that file. I'm adding that file inside my HTML tag. Angular.min.js, and I want to perform this URL routing, so I am including Angular UI router in this application. In the same way, I need some more Bootstrap CSS and other functionalities, so I am including this Bootstrap.js also. This is what I need for this application. I defined my ng app as a user management. So what we have to do, we have to create the function for this ng app, like angular.module of this particular application. Am I right? So what we are doing, inside our app folder, I'm creating this, where app equal to angular.module of the whatever the name I mentioned for this Angular.js and this one. Last time in our demo, what we have seen, there is no dependencies for this user management. Now right here, I want to use the route providers. That's why I'm injecting UI router as a dependency injection to my application. So once I inject this application, what will we can access? We can access the state providers and the URL route providers. These two functions are available inside this UI router. So right here I'm mentioning, whenever this URL router provider is not finding any path in this mentioned folder structure, just load login as a default path. This is what we are mentioning right here. That's why whatever the path I'm typing, you change it to login. You can see this. So this is what we are mentioning right here. If the path is not available in this provider, just load this login. The first one is done. Now, whenever this path is /login, I want to load a particular template inside my application, as well as I have to add the controller. This is what we are mentioning right here in the state provider. Whenever my path is /login, load this HTML inside the index.html and set the login controller as my controller to this application. Okay, so let's see what is there inside this login.html. I have this HTML inside the client app pages. So client app pages have my login folder. Inside that I have this HTML. So what is happening? Whenever that particular /login comes, it will go to this application and it will load this login.html. That's what we are doing. Okay, and it is loading this login controller as well. So let's see what we have in the login controller. In the same way, I have created the login controller, app.controller of this one. Then whenever user clicks on this login button, I want to send username and a password to the backend. I want to verify whether this user is a valid user or not. That's what I wanted to do. So how can you contact the backend services? Here we have one service called $HTTP. $HTTP of, so whatever the method, post method or get method or put method, you can use any method. And what is the URL name? API/user/login, and I want to pass the user information. I have that user information in the login.user. So you can see this. Here I have two text boxes. Am I right? Here I have two text boxes. This box is ng model I am assigning login.user.username, and the next text box is login.user.password. So whatever the data you are typing inside the text box, the data will be available in this username and the password. Okay, then whenever user clicks on the login button, this is the button I have created. It is the button, login button I have created. So whenever user clicks on this button, it will call a method called login. So right here, I have created a method called login.login. So here I mentioned as a login.login because this is alias name I'm mentioning. So I'm mentioning in the same way, login equal. I will be calling this particular method. Once this method gets called, it will make a service call to this API. Let's see that. Here I'm giving admin/admin. So this is the username and the password. So whenever you want to see these web services, you can open your developer tool. In the networks tab, you can see all the web services. Let me open this network. Whenever I click on this login, you can see we are making more calls because once I logged in, it is going to the next page. This is what my functionality right here. I logged in. Once the user and password is valid, just go to the /home. This is what I mentioned. Okay, let's give the wrong user ID password so it will be in the same page. Okay, now I'm getting the error called username mismatch. So you can see the service right here. Whenever I open the service, I'm posting the data something right here, user ID and the password. So in the response, it is giving status 500 and the username is mismatched. Okay, this is how we can handle this. Here I am writing the logic in this login controller. So if the status is 200, then user is a valid user. So navigate to /home. So what it will do in this browser, So whenever I give a proper user ID and the password, click on submit, it will add it right here as a /home. Can you see in this URL? Then for this particular URL, I am mentioning my route controller right here. Whenever my URL is /home, load home.controller and load home.html for that controller. This is what we are mentioning. So what will happen? Whenever I click on this home, it will go here, pages, home, home.html. Pages, home, home.html. It will load this particular HTML inside the index.html. Okay. But in the URL, you can see one more thing. It is not only the home. We can see home/list. Okay. So what is that? Inside the home, we have one more tab. These are all the tabs right here. Inside the home, I want to make one more route. This is the child route of it. So here if you see, inside my home state, I have one more state called the list. I'm mentioning if the state is URL is /list, load my list controller as well as load my list.html. So it will load this list.html and list.controller inside this home. We have the UI view. Right here it will load everything. Because this particular list is coming under this home.html. That's why we are loading this view inside this HTML. Okay. So what is happening? Whenever it is becoming a home and it is becoming list, so it will go to this controller. Okay. So home, it will load this home.html, and if it is coming under the list, it will load this list.html inside this home. Okay. Let's see what is there inside this list.html. So inside the list.html, I have created one variable called ngRepeat of some kind of data. Let's see this later. First, let's look into this list.controller. Here what I am doing, whenever I open this particular controller, it will make a HTTP call to this web service to get the list of users available in the DB. That's what we are doing. Method is get and get it from this particular service. Whenever it gets the user and bind it to, give it to the scope variable called user list. You can see right here, I'm not at all using $scope right here. Because if you use $scope, it will be really hard to migrate whenever we build this application in Angular 2.2. That's why we have to follow this kind of documentation. Instead of using $scope, use this variable. This will act as same as this $scope. Okay. So instead of using this, because if I use this, even inside the one function, this variable also will be the same. So we will get confused. That's why I am assigning this variable to LC. So we can use LC.whatever. So this LC now will act as a scope for this particular controller. Okay. Now let's go to this list.html. So whenever I load this list.html, I am not at all getting any data because I don't have any data in my MongoDB. So let's store some data. So what you can do, go to this create page and we'll give some data right here. So I'm creating a user right here as a create user. So I have saved this. Now if you go to the list page, we can see that particular user. In the same way, you can create multiple users. So whenever you are coming to this list page, it will get the user list from this service and it will give it to this ngRepeat. Okay. Now let me create one more user so it will be clear. I have created two users. So if you see our network tabs, so we are getting these the file we are getting from the service. In the list service, we are getting it as a JSON object. So what we are going to do, we are going to give this particular JSON object to this ng repeat. So in the ng repeat, we will look into this object, and each and every it will act like a normal for loop. So this will be your array. This will be like a array of I. So you can access user.username. So you are doing that only. User.first name, user.last name. So it will act like a for loop. Whatever the number you have, so what I am doing, I am creating a trng repeat inside that multiple TDs. So the user list whatever you have, it will repeat it over there, and it will create a table structure look over here in the UI. I'm not at all writing any code for this. It is just ng repeat will take care of. And in this Angular.js, we have this services and the filters. One of the filter is order by. So normally if you want to do this kind of order by, what you will be doing? Whenever you click on some particular button, we'll make a Ajax call to the backend, and in the backend we will be ordered by, like in the MySQL or wherever it is, we will do this order by and everything. But here in the Angular.js itself, you can do order by what? So here I am writing the functionality. Whenever you click on this first name heading tab, order by first name. The last name, just order by last name. This is what we are telling right here. The pipe symbol is mentioned for the filter, and this order by what we are passing right here. Order by first name or order by, let's do this. Instead of passing the variable, let me put it in this way. First name. Okay. So whenever I refresh this page, it will be ordered by first name because J. Okay. This is the use of order by. Okay. Now we have seen this list. Okay. How to do this create page. Okay. What I'm doing. Whenever I click on this create tab, in the same way we are changing the URL to /create. In our URL route provider, we have mentioned it. Whenever it becomes /.create, go to create.html and create.controller. This is what we have mentioned. So let's see what is there in the create.html. So in this create.html, I have created a user field called first name, the last name, username, and other stuff. So each and everything is binded to some particular ng model. So you can see this right here. The first name is binded to user.first name, last name, username, and password. So whenever user clicks on this particular button as sign up, so it will call cc.create, this method. So this method will be available inside our create controller. So if we call this particular method, we are writing on validation whether user's password and confirm as password is same. If it is not same, it will give the alert message right here and it will stop this execution. Otherwise, it will make a call to the backend service and it will push the data, so we can store the data in the MongoDB. You can see that particular functionality right here. Method.post of API/user/save. So we are calling this API and passing this user data. This is what we are doing inside this create list method. This is the basic application using Angular.js to explain routing and the dollar services, everything. Okay. Do you have any questions on this demo? Yeah. I have one question from Shahil called, where is this UI router defined? Okay. Let me show that to you. So this is where we are defining our AngularJS application. Am I right? So this is where we are defining our name. In this name, we can pass our dependency, that is UI router over here. I am just mentioning the router name right here. Did I answer your question? Okay. Next one. So please suggest the best AngularJS debugger plugin and how to use it. I am getting a question from Suresh. So we can use the normal Chrome itself to debug our application. Let's do this. So whenever I click on this particular button, I want to check whether we have all the data. So let me go to the sources. You can see all the file right here. So I have this particular HTML inside this create. So I can add the debugger right here. Just click on the particular line number. So it will add the debugger. Okay. So whenever you click on this sign up button, it will come over there. It stopped. So you can check all the data. So whether do I have the password? No, it is undefined. This is also undefined. So if you want to go to the next line, press F10. So it will go to the next line. Okay. This is how you can debug your application. Okay. How could we describe $HTTP? $HTTP is a service to call your web service whatever you expose. It is not only for the Node.js or anything. So if you use your Java or .NET, we can expose it as a web service. So if you want to call that web service, you have to use our $HTTP. In the $HTTP, we have to mention what is the method we are using and what is the URL we have to call. This way we can use the $HTTP service in this AngularJS application. Okay. Yes, I am getting one more question from Ravi called what is $location? Okay, this $location we used it in our login page. Let's go to that one. Inside our login page, we are using $location. What we are telling, whatever the URL you are getting right here, if I mention as a /home, it will go there. $location of path. So this $location service.path, some URL, if I mention it, so it will add that URL after this hashtag. That is the use of $location service. Did I answer your question, Ravi? Okay. And one more question from Ilaya. Is there any config file? Yeah. Okay. So there is no config file for this AngularJS. Just we will be having only our defined this particular script alone. After this, you can create your app.config. That is not a config file. It is a AngularJS functionality. So what we are doing, whenever you start the application, first it will come inside this config file. If you in the app.controller and all, if you define it in the HTML, then only it will come to that particular controller. But whenever you are defining as a app.config, if you start our application, directly it will come to this config. So whatever the functionality you want to write, whenever you start the application, you can write it inside this .config or .run. Okay. Okay guys, almost we are at the end of the session, so let's go back to our PPT. So okay, I'm getting one more question. This basic console.log. What is console.log? So as a UI developer, if you want to test the application, so what we will be writing? We will be writing the console.log inside this particular functionality. So whatever the log you are writing, it will be printed inside your debugger tool. In the debugger tool, we will be having one tab called console. You can see this. So whatever the log I have written, it will come over there. Then I can verify, okay, it is coming inside this particular web page or inside this particular functionality. So I can verify it. It is like a kind of debugging technique only. No, I mean, again, one question, is it need any app? Nothing. So it is the default plugin available for this developer tool. Just in the normal Chrome, press F12, automatically it will open the developer. If you are using Firefox or anything else, you have to include the external plugin like Firebug or anything else. Yeah, I'm getting one question from Sranjeevi, where our JSON data obtaining the REST services returned for. So I have written all the REST services using our Node application. Now this webinar is only focused to AngularJS. That's why we have covered only in the client side. So if you have any queries like to get this recording session or anything else, you can contact to support.edureka.com. You will be getting the queries, all the queries will be resolved. Okay. Anyway, we are at the end of our session. So let's go back to our PPT presentations. Okay. Now we have seen this demo also. Okay. Whenever you So if you register for this particular AngularJS session, what you will be getting? So this is just a 21 hours of session. The first session will be covering what is the introduction to JavaScript MVC framework and how to build the basic AngularJS app. This is our first module. And the second one is the use of dependency injections and controllers. And if we have multiple controllers, how can we share the data between controllers? Like, can we use the services or the root scopes or any other techniques? So we can use this. We'll be covering all the controllers and this queries over there in the second module. The third module will be routes, directives, and the filters. These are all the default functionalities available in this AngularJS. So we'll be covering those things in our third module. The fourth module will be creating our custom directives. First one, we have covered the basic directives, whatever AngularJS created, like Angular app, ng app, or ng click, these things. But if I want to create my own directive, and that particular directive should have its own functionalities, how can we create it? How can we create my own filters and services? That we will be covering in our fourth module. The fifth module, so what are all the third-party modules, AngularJS modules, we can use it for our web development. So even this Angular UI also one of the third-party module. In the same way, we have n number of third-party modules. And for the, if you want to do this localization or normalization, for this we have this models. So how to use those models? What are all the third-party will be usable for the application? We will be covering those things. Plus, one of the best thing is testing. So whenever you write your application, how to test this AngularJS app? We will be covering those sessions in this our module 5. Then the fifth module will be how to build an AngularJS application with Node.js. Because this is really hot in the market. How to build a mean stack application. Like you can build an application with only JavaScript. Because the Node.js also is developed by JavaScript, which is running on Google's V8 engine. So we will be building end-to-end application. From the client to server, we will be building with only the JavaScript. So we will be covering that in our module 6. And the module 7, we will be doing a project using AngularJS, Node.js application and storing the data in the MongoDB. So after this particular course, you should be able to create a end-to-end application with JavaScript alone. This is what the objective of our course. So what are all the features in this course? One is live online class. So we will be conducting this course by weekends, and it will be really sufficient time to cover all the modules. And so each and every classes will be recorded. So if you miss any other session also, you can attend the next batch session, you can cover it. Otherwise you can get the recorded video session and you can use that. Next one, 24/7 support. If you have any queries, you can call our support guys and the queries will be resolved. And each and every module will be having its own quiz. So we'll check what we learned in this particular module. Then the last one is we will be doing the project end-to-end JavaScript project. And we will be getting the verifiable certificate from our Edureka on this particular course. Yeah guys, so at this time we covered almost all the features in the AngularJS. If you have any other queries regarding the session or our course, just contact our support.edureka.com and please share your feedback after the session. Once again, thank you guys.